Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something incredible. It's an invisible logic, a kind of hidden operating system that runs our world, from the simplest things in your house to, well, the entire universe. So let's just dive right in with a question. What do a bathtub, an ant colony, and a super intelligent AI all have in common? Now, it sounds like the beginning of a really weird joke, right? But the answer? The answer unlocks a powerful way of seeing absolutely everything. They are all systems, and they all run on the exact same fundamental set of rules.
And our journey to understand this hidden operating system, it starts in probably the last place you'd expect, a simple bathtub. We're taking our cue here from the brilliant work of systems thinker Donella Meadows, who saw the whole world in this humble object.
First things first, what even is a system? Well, it's not just a pile of stuff. A system is a set of things, and it can be anything. People, cells, you name it, that are all interconnected. And because of those connections, they create their own distinct patterns over time. The real secret sauce isn't in the parts themselves, it's in how they all relate to each other.
Okay, so back to the bathtub. It perfectly shows you the three basic building blocks of any system. First, you've got the stock. That's just the water that's in the tub. Then you have an inflow, the water coming in from the faucet, and an outflow, the water going out the drain. The amount of stock, the water level, is totally dependent on the rate of that inflow and outflow. Simple, right? But believe me, this is where all the magic starts.
See, these parts don't just exist, they talk to each other through what we call feedback loops. There are two main kinds. A balancing loop is all about stability. It's goal-seeking. It's you, with your hand on the faucet, trying to get the water level just right. But then you have the reinforcing loop. This one amplifies things. It's a runaway process. Think about a microphone getting too close to a speaker. That tiny bit of feedback spirals into a deafening squeal. That's a reinforcing loop, and it can create incredible growth or a total disaster.
And here is the absolute key insight from Meadows. We love to blame outside events for our problems, right? But so often, the system itself is the root cause. Its very structure is designed to produce the behavior we're seeing. An outside shock might trigger it, but you apply that same shock to a different system, and you'll get a completely different result. The behavior comes from the structure.
All right, so let's see how this simple idea scales up. We're zooming out of the bathroom now and looking at the natural world, where these same basic rules create a level of complexity that is just staggering.
The core idea we need to grasp here is recursion. It's just a process where a simple rule gets repeated over and over and over. Think of a fractal, where that same beautiful pattern shows up whether you're zoomed way in or way out. Well, nature is the ultimate recursive artist. It uses these tiny, repeatable rules to build everything, from a single snowflake to an entire forest.
And this recursion leads to a truly beautiful phenomenon called emergence. You see, an individual ant isn't a genius, right? It just follows a couple of super simple local rules, like follow that pheromone trail. But from all those simple individual actions, a highly intelligent, super efficient foraging network for the entire colony just emerges. There's no boss ant giving orders. The complex global behavior is an emergent property of the system itself. And you see this same thing in everything from a forest fire to our entire global economy.
Now let's take this incredibly powerful lens and turn it inward. Let's look at maybe the most complex and personal system any of us will ever know, our own mind.
Okay, this might be a wild thought. We feel like one person, a single unified I. But thinkers like P.D. Ouspensky argued that our mind is actually more like a parliament, filled with competing I's. The I that wants to get up for a 6 a.m. run is a totally different I from the one that hits the snooze button 5 times. Who you are emerges from this constant negotiation between all these different parts of yourself.
And if you listen closely, our language gives the game away. Think about how often you say something like, well, a part of me wants to do this, but another part of me feels that way. You are instinctively describing your own internal system. You're pointing directly at the hidden feedback loops between all those different I's that are constantly battling it out to produce your final thoughts and actions.
Now here's the really cool part. We are not just helpless passengers in this internal system.
we can get in the driver's seat. A technique like autosuggestion. That famous phrase, every day in every respect, I am getting better and better. What is that? It's consciously creating and programming a reinforcing feedback loop in your own mind, using your imagination to steer the entire system in the direction you want it to go.
So from the mind we're born with, let's turn to the minds we are now building. Because the world of artificial intelligence is giving us some of the most jaw-dropping examples of emergence today.
Just listen to this quote from AI researcher Nicholas Carlini. It is absolutely mind-bending. They took a large language model and just trained it to do one simple thing: predict the next move in a long text file of chess games. It was never told the rules, it was never taught strategy, it wasn't even told that the point was to win. And yet, out of that one simple recursive rule, predict the next thing, emerged the ability to play championship-level chess. The model built its own internal understanding of the game's logic from scratch.
So you have to be asking, how on earth is that even possible? Well, one really interesting idea is something called spline theory. It offers a cool geometric way to picture it. Instead of thinking in abstract rules like we do, the AI is basically building a giant, insanely detailed map. It carves up a problem space, like chess, into millions of tiny little regions, and for each tiny region, it learns a super simple if this, then that rule. The breathtaking intelligence we see is what emerges when you stitch all of those millions of simple little maps together.
And what's really fascinating is that this isn't just a happy accident anymore. Researchers are now building AIs on purpose using these exact principles. You're looking at a framework for an AI that's intentionally designed with layers for things like self-correction and expanding its thoughts in a structured way. It's almost like they're building in a conscious feedback system to make sure the AI's reasoning stays logical and on track. It is pure systems thinking in action.
All right, for our final act, we're going to zoom all the way out to the biggest picture possible. Because what if it's not just bathtubs and ant colonies and AIs? What if science itself, and even reality itself, are just giant systems?
The famous historian of science, Thomas Kuhn, he argued that science doesn't just move forward by adding one new fact at a time. He said it progresses through what he called paradigm shifts. These are total revolutions in the underlying system of thought. A paradigm is like the scientific community's shared operating system. It defines what questions even make sense to ask.
And this is the real power of a paradigm shift. It doesn't just change what you know, it literally changes what you see. When Aristotle looked at a swinging stone, he saw an object that was trying to fall to its natural resting place but was being held back. But when Galileo looked at the exact same stone, he saw a pendulum, an object with totally new properties like rhythm and periodicity. The swinging stone didn't change, the system of thought used to observe it did.
And some philosophical ideas take this to its ultimate conclusion. Frameworks like Breeze theory suggest that recursion isn't just a feature of reality, it is reality. In this view, the entire universe is one grand recursive system. Consciousness and the cosmos, observing and creating each other through a loop of self-reference. It is a wild, mind-bending idea, but it flows directly from the same principles we first saw on our humble bathtub.
So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? It's a new toolkit for thinking. It's about learning to look past the obvious surface-level events and see the hidden structures underneath. The feedback loops, the delays, the invisible rules that are actually running the show. It's about finding those leverage points, those tiny places where one small push can cause massive change. It's about understanding that more often than not, the system itself is the cause of its own behavior. That's the art of thinking in systems.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think powerful question. Because this isn't just an abstract idea. Once you learn to see the world's hidden operating system, you also start to see all the places where you can make a real, meaningful difference. The question is no longer if you can change things, but where you will choose to begin.